Trade limitless on HMX, the next-gen decentralized perpetual exchange. Trade crypto, FX, commodities with up to 1000x leverage on the Arbitrum network. Benefit from low fees, multi-asset collateral support, and cross-margin flexibility. Check them out.
From meme to utility, Floki has it all. NFT metaverse game called Valhalla. Floki University, DeFi, charity, and shopping. Floki is governed by the people, for the people. Floki, together there is no stopping us.
Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. What an amazing day we've had so far. Day 3 of Congress. The event has just been absolutely incredible so far. And I am about as excited as I can be to introduce you to our next guest. One of the smartest men I know, someone that I've been very fortunate to get to know over the last couple of years. And genuinely, I just think you really need probably a couple of notepads for this one, guys, because there's going to be so much alpha in this session. So without further ado, and without waffling on too much, I would love to introduce you to Paweł from Nomad Fulcrum. Hey, Paweł, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, man. Good to see you again.
Awesome. You too, mate. You too. Well, look, let me just... there's so many things I want to discuss, right? But I really want to kind of get to the core of the alpha of this. So we maybe start with a little bit about you, kind of introduce you to our viewers, who you are and what your journey's been.
Okay. So my name is Paweł Łaskarzewski. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started, doing things over 20 years ago. The first thing that I was starting with was like working for aerospace company. I was working as aerospace engineer. So I started my, journey with being a developer, an engineer, which gave me a very interesting point of view while doing a business right now on how tech can work, because it's very rare to have a combination of like business knowledge and technological knowledge. Usually those are two different, places that are fighting to each other to deliver deadlines and this kind of thing. So that was the start of mine. And after like working 5 years for different companies, the aerospace one, the government bodies, etc., I thought, okay, that's a good moment to move on and start building an upside for myself. I had enough knowledge. I knew enough people. I was confident enough by myself to move on, to start something fresh that was purely my own. And I started the first startup of mine, which I sold like 10 years later. And from that time, I co-founded like 4 startups, 3 exited or so far. I have another one in States, which is a biotech company. And I had like my minority shareholder. Mm-hmm. And after, setting up those businesses, which were like more or less in very similar industry, I thought, okay, but I would like to learn something new. And this was the moment when I started to, work for the banking industry. And this is when I realized that the banking industry is so bad. Like they are bad at everything. They are very good at loans. That's the only thing that they make money from, but they are very good at it. They know how to do a risk assessment, this and that. Not very often, because sometimes those banking are collapsing, as we've seen this year a couple of times. So then I realized that the blockchain, where I was like long time before, because I was mining Bitcoin like 2011. But it was for fun. No one believed into that. So I thought blockchain is growing up very fast, and that might be a solution for a lot of elements of the current financial ecosystem. And that's how I get into crypto, mm-hmm. where I co-founded Nomad Fulcrum, which is basically right now a crypto company that is combining crypto, blockchain world, and traditional finances within a regulated environment. So basically, you can think about this as a tokenized hedge fund, which is something that Larry Fink is shouting all around all the time to everyone right now.
Mate, that's amazing. I mean, so some of the most interesting conversations I think that we've shared since we've known each other, Paweł, are both of us come from a business background before we kind of step foot into finance, right? And I think one of the really kind of shocking things for both of us when we came into the space was looking at the inefficiencies within trading, within traditional finance, and especially within cryptocurrency, right? It was a very, very immature space, as we all know. I think having that kind of business acumen coming into a space can be a really, really big advantage. But you've kind of taken a really, really bold approach. You've not tried to build a token, not tried to build a meme coin, this, that, and the other. What you've done is you've kind of said there is a world here for traditional finance and for cryptocurrencies and the blockchain to come together, right? Now that's kind of a while, yeah? And I mean, it's just a very, very interesting kind of concept. So how did you go about thinking, look, I'm going to bring together these two gigantic worlds? Yes, there's similarities, but regulatory issues, like everything that you have, the inefficiencies in traditional finance. I mean, where do you even start with that?
So I've started with thinking that everyone in the crypto thinks that there is TradFi and there's crypto market. And those are totally separate ones, that they should not be mingled together. But I believe crypto have its flows, like liquidity. For example, in crypto, the amount of the liquidity is very small as for now. Yeah. In traditional market, the liquidity is amazing. This is all the liquidity of the whole world. So those two markets can benefit from each other. Ownership issues can be solved in traditional financial system through blockchain solutions. Why I can buy stocks from 9 to 5 p.m. from Monday to Friday. Do they shut down the internet after those hours? What the heck? It's it's the problem of the old infrastructure that has been built once internet was very expensive, and that was how this technology has been built back then. And we still have this big pain of having this kind of old systems, old solutions. So blockchain can help in here as well. But in crypto, for example, from the other hand, you have financial products like loan protocols, where you have one crypto secured by another one, which is basically a mistake because you never use as a collateral assets of the same class as the borrowed one, because it always goes wrong. Every year, every 2 years, we hear and see those big headlines, massive liquidations in crypto. Why? Because you borrowed one Bitcoin, you provided 150% of the collateral in Ethereum, Bitcoin goes down, value of the collateral went down, and you are being liquidated, and you're done. But what if you can use a different type of asset that is not pegged to the value of the Bitcoin? Let's imagine some traditional market assets that are tokenized, which is a big thing right now. So you can put this as a collateral, and then Bitcoin is going down, and your collateral value is not going down because it's not pegged as the whole crypto is to the price of the Bitcoin. So you are safe. Those protocols are much more sustainable, much more secure, and you are not being liquidated every 2 years from all the money that you put into the borrowing protocol. So yeah, I see a lot of elements that those both worlds can benefit from each other. So that was the first thing. And then the main problem, the thinking process was proper 5 years ago, but it was not physically possible to do this 5 years ago when I had this idea in the first place. Why? Because of regulations. 5 years ago, there was no bank, no single bank all over the world that would open a crypto company a bank account. Everyone was saying that this is money in crypto that is from some kind of shady businesses, that the Colombian uncle is sending the money to Europe for the white powder or something. That was the way of thinking. But check it out. MicroStrategy, BlackRock, everyone was buying Bitcoin. They were preparing for that, even though that they were buying this without informing everyone outside. So there were some moves, but there were no regulations that would set the proper stage to set such a business. So once governments like European Union started to speak about new regulatory framework like MiCA and other things, this was the immediate point in my head that this is the right moment. Why? Because that means that they will open for having blockchain and crypto assets as an asset that we can use there. And right now, we can all, of course, go out of the building that I'm in or you're in and do the protest. We are against of the regulations, but this will not change a thing. This will not change anything. And by being pragmatic in our business in doing such a thing, we can do this, or we can just, apply to the rules that are going to be set. They are going to be here. So we can have opinions, which can say regulations are wrong or good, but then we need to be pragmatic in building the business. So that's why we also applying those regulations into this. It's not an easy thing, but they're gonna be here, and everyone have to be regulated at the end. And the last element, the third element of that, besides that both of them can benefit from each other, regulations that are going to be in here, the regulations will bring a big capital to the crypto. Larry Fink, BlackRock, MicroStrategy were not buying Bitcoin for years to not make money on that. They were buying this to launch an ETF. The
Mm-hmm.
ETF is going to be like if someone from the market is buying one token of this ETF, one
Mm-hmm.
participation unit of the ETF, the
Mm-hmm.
ETF is obliged to buy using this capital, the crypto, the
Yeah.
physical asset, so
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin. So everyone thinks that BlackRock or MicroStrategy will buy it from the spot market, but no, they were buying this big amount of cryptos to buy this Bitcoin from themselves, from
Mm-hmm.
their own treasury, so they can keep most of the profits that are going to be generated by the
Mm-hmm.
big volumes that are the biggest when at the very beginning of such a product, because
Mm-hmm.
there is a hype. So they will make a lot of capital on that. So that's why I think that a lot of money will flow into the crypto using those regulated crypto assets. And those are the main 3 points that why I'm in this business, because I believe that this is going to set the stage for the next decade or two.
Well, I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I think obviously, I suppose going back to the naivety of the crypto space, right? I think a lot of people, probably even a lot of people up until this moment of hearing you speak, probably haven't thought of it in that context, right? You know, it's been very much an us and them environment compared to traditional finance, compared to cryptocurrency, where cryptocurrency has had this kind of rebellious kind of, you know, fighting against the system feel. And I think that's why so many people feel, without really understanding it, that they're against regulation, right? Without really understanding what that regulation can bring. But what I find really interesting is the fact that, you know, you had this concept a number of years ago, call it 5 years ago, right? But that actually it was, you know, it was almost, you could call it the maturity of the space a little bit, when the, you know, governments have to pay attention to it now. You're having things like Mika come through, which kind of opens the door for you to do what you're doing. But it's still very pioneering what you're doing, isn't it? There isn't a roadmap for you to follow, right? You have to basically keep going through and down all these avenues to try and make this roadmap that eventually other people will follow in the space, right? Because the regulations, fine, the doors are open to them now, but they're not opaque, is it? They're not black and white yet. So, you know, regulating and kind of operating yourself within that space has a lot of challenges. I mean, what are the key kind of challenges that you face at Nomad Fulcrum?
So the killer challenges is that like there was no one basically who went that road, because the law is just being applied like as we speak right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no use case. So there is a lot of challenges, but those challenges are combined with benefits, because at the end, being one of the first ones that are moving ahead are in the group, in the pioneers of this like RWA or tokenization space, is bringing you a lot of value and traction. Because most of if you will check right now, I was checking the RWA market, it's growing like crazy. But if you will check most of the projects that are doing RWAs, they are not regulated, and everything that is behind them within most of those, you know, companies is in the longer run a problem, because without regulations, they will have a glass ceiling that will stop from deploying capital, or after which the regulator will put an eye on them, and they will have a big problem, because they will provide a proof of all the legal activities that they've done before. And that's a big problem in most of the cases that I've seen, and they are trying to, you know, move around of the law by using some Cayman Island entities, this and that. But at the end, if you're, you know, handling and providing financial services for European Union citizens, you might have a problem in here. There's always some sort of UBO. There is always someone responsible that you can point a finger with, especially if there is a law implemented to, you know, get the responsibility from. So we don't want to be one of those. So that's why from the day zero, we are working to get a Swiss regulation, the full Swiss regulatory financial license. We are in the middle of that process. So like, I hope that within the next like 12, 16 weeks, we're gonna, you know, get one. And we will.
That would be huge, right? Sorry to interrupt you, but just think about how huge that would be for the space. Swift, you're talking about Swiss regulatory compliance, right? So notoriously in traditional finance, still one of the hardest gaps to bridge, right, for any company, let alone with what you're kind of the forefront of technology you're bringing forward, the tokenization of hedge funds, right? But do you think it's kind of the fact that you're even at that stage or able to kind of approach that stage? Do you feel that maybe that's that's a sign that the space is maturing, that it's being treated a lot more seriously than it has been previously?
Yes, definitely it is. Like we can see that by, for instance, CEO of Swift speaking publicly that he's going to change the whole underlying layer of the Swift technology to Chainlink, for example, and to do this with on the blockchain. So they are speaking about that. About the banks that are preparing to introduce fully regulated tokenized financial products. Larry Fink, the owner, the CEO, sorry, of BlackRock, which is like $9 trillion fund. And they are speaking about tokenized products. They are speaking about the tokenization. And they were against, like 6 years ago, they are completely against crypto. And right now they are fully in. There's a new exchange. You might probably hear, you have probably have heard about that. It's M2. It's like a new exchange, the Dubai and Abu Dhabi, so UAE, new fully regulated exchange, compliant with laws and everything. I just got invited to, be there in the next week on the, inauguration of that. And
Brilliant.
there are so many people that are going to be involved into that. Like one of the investors is UAE government, but another one is the biggest mining group worldwide. So they have a big amounts of the liquidity that can deploy immediately to that company, so they can be a competitor of the other, big centralized exchanges worldwide. And they are the first one that is going to be like fully compliant with existing laws. So there are a lot of elements that are making the space much more mature. And with maturity of the space, liquidity will gonna be brought to the space because big capital was a little bit afraid without regulation. Why? Because at the end, like there are a lot of scams, hacks, and security issues in the crypto. So at the end, if there is a big company that have been scammed for like $5 million in the normal world, you can point a finger and say, this guy was responsible for that. I can sue him. They did not pay attention to what they are doing, this and that. In crypto, in most cases, that's it. You have been scammed. And you can point a finger like into the earth and someone is responsible. I don't know where they are, but most probably they have a good fun with my money. And that's it. So you feel me? So that's the difference. And regulations that are going to be applied will put some frame to remove all those bad behaviors from the crypto, or to at least put some kind of responsibility onto the founders of the project. So that's important element of that. And you can, as I said, there are opinions. You can think this is bad or this is good, but at the end, it's gonna be here. So if you want to have a business in crypto, you better be, compliant with that. And opinion is just opinion. It will not change anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it always, people compare crypto to the Wild West all the time, but actually, when you think about it, it's so very true, right? Yeah, people were struggling with that separation into structure and into what they saw as more conformist roles, in the same way that today we look at regulation as if it's evil, right? But actually, what you said is right. What regulation allows to do is for big money to step into the space, and big money beyond the level of understanding of most people within cryptocurrency, right? Because millions, billions, you're talking about trillions. You're talking about BlackRock controlling almost 10 trillion, right? So under management. Now, they're one of a lot of entities that can open this space up in a huge way, right? But the risk profile has to be right for these companies to do it, right? They're selling these products in. I think another side of it as well, and I don't know if you agree, but for me, I think I couldn't agree with your statement more about banking, by the way. Brilliant at loans, at giving you loans are hugely higher. Just look at the moment of the market, what you can get on your savings compared to what it costs you to borrow, right? There's a huge disparity between that, right? They should be making more than enough money. But I also think that there's been a real hesitance for this to be taken up because the banking sector has so many inefficiencies, but those inefficiencies pay a lot of people's wages, right?
Yep.
We had a gentleman on this morning, a guy called Matthew Dixon, involved in the AI space as well, and machine learning. Really, really good conversation. And we were kind of talking about something similar where, you've almost had to push these big institutions to the point that they've realized they can't kill this and make it go away and kind of retreat back to the safety of what they know, that they're now having to take this front on, right? They're having to accept it. This thing, it isn't going away. It is going to change stuff. But I think there's a big challenge whenever you take, and whenever you take any company, especially a massive company with tens of thousands of employees, and you change the entire structure, the whole way that they approach everything, right? There's going to be a big transitional period. And I think it's always very difficult to know when that is. But if I look at the current market conditions we're in, where we've got geopolitical factors. Obviously, we've got geoeconomical factors going on. You've got risk markets that have been getting pummeled. You've had an incredibly strong dollar. And actually, crypto, Bitcoin especially, it kind of held up quite well against that, right? And I suppose there's an argument there that maybe people didn't see, maybe people were using it more as an asset class. They feel that they could park some wealth into, but maybe not a lot. The other argument is that it's kind of reached this point now where, progress is never assured, right? But it's on a much more level footing than it has been. Yet you're still kind of getting the nervousness. You're still getting the lack of commitment in people wanting to kind of invest in it. And I just wonder, in your eyes, kind of, do you see it that way? Do you see it now that it's kind of, these big institutions, because you've spoken to a lot of them, right? In terms of what with Nomad Fulcrum are doing, what with getting regulatory compliance over in Switzerland. Do you see it now that the tide is turning in that these managers and these people, that control the huge money flow are thinking we need to position ourselves in this space, but they're coming to it quite late, right? So, buying in the information, buying in the expertise, everything you need to do and thinking about this massive change, that's a huge undertaking. Do you think we have enough about it at the moment with the space that they're thinking this way?
So yes, they're definitely thinking this way, and I will give you an interesting example. But in the first place, I will set the stage to the answer. So, like, big organizations and corporations are not building a thing by themselves.
Yes.
They do outsourcing or M&As, and that's it, how they grow. They buy a new company, new technology, they integrate with the business, that's it, done. Or they invest money into something that can further develop their organization, but they are not building anything internally. So that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's one element. And a very interesting example is SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, which collapsed this year. Mm-hmm. So Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, and then it has been bought by HSBC. And HSBC bought the SVB. And what SVB was doing, SVB was one of the biggest pipe with capital between traditional and crypto market. So the money was floating in through SVB. So once SVB collapsed, we've seen those problems with withdrawals on Binance, this and that. So HSBC bought this bank not because of the amount of capital they had, not because of the loans of the client, this and that. They bought it because of the technology. But there was a mark why in the agreement where they were buying that they cannot do with this entity crypto activity. Mm-hmm. So what HSBC, couple months after acquiring SVB for £1, announced, they announced that they are renaming SVB into HSBC New Technologies. Mm-hmm. So that means that they removed all the banking element and they just said, this is just technological company. We just own technology. Mm-hmm. So right now they can provide these technologies as a technology, which was the biggest part of capital between traditional and crypto market. This is a very important element, as a SaaS to different banks, etc., or to all the crypto exchanges. So by £1, they acquired the whole capital pipe that was allowing for exchange between traditional crypto and traditional market and crypto, which means they own right now the bridge that is providing the biggest liquidity exchange between those two markets. So that's how those banks are growing. They don't need to be the smartest one. They don't have to be the first one. But because of the amount of the cash, in that case, it was just £1. But because of the amount of money they have capital to acquire new organizations. And from the other hand, there is this Santander Bank, the Spanish one. Yeah. There is a Coty. Coty is like I was speaking with her a couple of times because we had some conversations with Falcon. But Santander Bank, she's global head of blockchain at Santander. Santander is like second or one of the biggest European banks because huge, they are everywhere. Yeah, huge one. And they have like 80 people in the blockchain department, including Solidity, Rust developers, etc., etc. And even though they are expanding with the ideas for the products for future. So this is like very startup-ish way how this department works. And they, in 2021, released corporate bonds on the blockchain, on the public blockchain, worth 20 million euros because they wanted to test it out if this is possible. And they did it with approval of European Central Bank. So they are heavily into that. because
Mm.
for them it's a new wave of distribution. They don't need to have only their system where people can log in. If you own those corporate bonds, you can sell it on the secondary market to anyone. But if you
Yeah.
want to liquidate, you always need to have a communication with the bank, go through the KYC, this and that, through the all compliance stuff. So that means that those banks are thinking about this in two different ways, like proactively as Santander, or by M&As and not doing a thing by themselves, but just buying or do outsourcing as HSBC did. So they are thinking there are two different approaches, and for sure they are going to be here that way or another.
Yeah, I agree. I suppose it's interesting, right? Because they kind of almost bought it in the case of HSBC, right, to stick it into their like research and development department, right? What they've done is they've bought an existing business that a little bit like Amazon do or Google, right? They find incredibly good companies that fix a solution, and rather than build a team to make the same thing, they acquire the company, not necessarily for the turnover or the image or anything, purely for the technology to bring it in house. I like what you're saying about turning it into a SaaS product as well. I think it's incredibly clever, right? Controlling that side of the game is something that is far, far away from people's thought process.
They do not provide crypto activities; they just provide SaaS product.
But isn't it a clever way to frame it, though? Like I think that side of things is very, very clever, right? So, tell me a little bit more about the market, right? So, what I'm really interested in, and I know we've had this conversation a few times, right? But in terms of someone's view on the markets, you're somebody that I know you've got a fantastic understanding of trading. For people that don't know much about me, I'm quite a simple price action trader. I have an interest across the market in different elements, right? But I think something that kind of helped my journey was having a very good understanding of traditional finance and also business, right? So when I came into the space, I had a very different kind of mindset to most people. And I think one of the things that's really helped, and something that we always do at the Bird Nest as well, is kind of how seriously we take on our audits of any potential partners or companies that we work with. We get a lot of compliments for the brands that we partner with. A lot of people think that it's luck, right? But actually, you don't realize that how much you can find out with a very, very basic, SWOT analysis that you can put on things. I mean, people didn't even hear about things like this in the space, right? Looking at business plans, looking at real world application, looking at money flow, profit. Technology has historically been, and even looking outside of crypto to things like Uber, for example, Uber took a long, long time to turn a profit, but the company had a multi-billion-dollar valuation straight off the bat, right? So in times of prosperity, you can get these big kind of, call them bubbles or mini bubbles, whatever that's within the space. I know you've had interest in the market for a long time, right? And I know you've built an incredible team around you, which you've done through your own knowledge of the space and also brought in, as we all say, bring in people that are better and smarter than you are in the areas that you need help. But in terms of how you look at the market, how you look at Bitcoin, right? How do you kind of see it? How do you see its development? Do you think that this is the stage within the markets now where we've built that really good foundation? Like you say, there's major institutions stepping into the space now. I mean, would you be someone that's looking to really kind of gorge, if you like, on the opportunities that are coming up now? Would you see this as a little bit of a rocky road ahead still before we kind of really get to that adoption phase?
So the adoption is going. We're gonna be able to speak about the real adoption once we'll stop speaking about NFTs, crypto, and we will just speak about digital assets. Why? Because if we will still have a need to speak that you need to have a wallet, gas fees, private keys, this and that, most of the people will struggle. Like we have a lot of people that are in 50s, 60s, 70s, and they are not tech savvy enough to be there.
So we're talking about user experience here, right?
Exactly. That's the thing. And I will give you an example. Like, in my opinion, the crypto market where we are at the stage where we are at right now is very similar to the dot-com bubble. Like there was a dot-com bubble, a lot of companies, insane valuation, not doing a shit, like not doing a thing, nothing, and are just adding a .com or, right now we have AI, NFTs, this and that. So, and this is very similar structure. And then there was a .com bubble burst, like most of the companies died, but a few business models survived. And based on that, on those ruins of the .com bubble, the whole new economy has been built. just to mention social media, digital marketing, and e-commerce. And those industries were growing for over a decade to become the ones that are providing right now hundreds of millions of jobs worldwide and trillions of dollars of revenue. And this would not become without adoption. And adoption in that case were different tools that were simplifying using those services. And one of the tools, the most important tool for e-commerce that have been built ever is our online payments. Without that, you would never have a service. Like I have a grocery store, three floors below my flat where I'm living. So I'm not going those 3 floors down. I'm just opening an app, and the app is called Right Now, and they're providing me those grocery stores right now. Like 15 minutes later, I have them on my door, and it's amazing because I can pay with a card, with Apple Pay, and with tons of different payment providers or payment solutions that are allowing me to move my money around.
So that's what allows it, though, right? It's the speed of transaction. It's the technology that allows you to go onto an app to have the right up-to-date products on the shelves.
And there was a need to build that, to spend a lot of time, like 10 years, 15 years, to provide those services. So I believe we are in a very similar moment in the crypto, where right now we are building a lot of different tools that will help us in the future to do so. Like, for example, how to create a wallet without a need of remembering private keys. Like I can imagine that on this iPhone, like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Apple can introduce an Apple Wallet where my private key is my biometric, traits are my face, finger, or something. And this will gonna be, and this is super easy of use because I'm just logging into my iPhone. It see my face, finger, or something. And I can do transactions. I can have NFTs. My NFTs might be a ticket. There are already airlines that are using NFTs to sell plane tickets, and they're allowing to resell me that. So if I'm going to decide I'm not flying to New York, I will sell it on the market, and I can do so. I don't need to have like this canceling policy from the airlines, this and that. Or I have a ticket for a concert or something, and I can have these things on my phone using biometric, and I don't need to speak anymore about NFTs or crypto. I'm just speaking about things on my wallet, like how we are calling a plane pass or concert ticket or even ticket on Apple Wallet. There is no name for that. It's ticket. That's it. So this is the real adoption, and this is the direction that we are moving forward right now. And check where we were 10 years ago with crypto, where we were 5 years ago. Where are we right now? Like we don't see this because this was a very big time span, like 10 years, roughly speaking. But if you will, shrink that time, and you will see how fast the growth was in terms of amount of users, etc. This is amazing. Like this is amazing. And some of the population of different countries have been saved by the crypto. Like I was just with Adrian in Istanbul on Binance Blockchain Week, and 60-70% of people in Turkey are using crypto because for them it's a place to store the value, the wealth. Because the Turkish lira is going down like crazy, like 90% within the last 6 years to dollar. It's losing. Like yesterday, I saw that Turkish lira, that Bitcoin in Turkish lira was 1 million Turkish liras, and the day after it was 1,100,000. So that's how fast the depreciations of the value of the local currencies. And like we were there also another event together. Even we were there in May. So since May to October, November, where I was like last week, the taxi price in Turkish lira to dollar went. The difference was like 50% within like half a year. So that's how. And those people are moving their assets into crypto, and this is also the best way to engage them, because like everyone worldwide is looking for mechanisms how to onboard people, and the economy, very bad one. Is the best way to onboard people, and South America is the same. So
Africa as well. Africa is very similar.
Africa as well. So I believe this is a very good direction we are going to, and tools is going to, like, the next bull run is going, in my opinion, to be based on a couple of things, like of course entertainment, of course RWAs, because they will bring a lot of money to traditional market, and they're going to be to crypto market, and they're going to be regulated, and of course tools that will simplify a lot the whole space and will allow to onboard more people.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. Going back to one of the points you made earlier, kind of looking at the dot-com bubble burst, I see it very much like an evolutionary process, right? If you look back through the evolution of any species, right, you basically have a situation where you've got the strongest, you go in, everything gets burnt to the ground, you have the very small surviving elements that manage to weather the storm, and you build very healthily from there, right? So it's like the saying of the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? You get so much noise, the space kind of grows, it spreads out in all kind of different directions. And then you have this consolidatory event where basically everything gets burnt down to the ashes. And then you have the real kind of building kind of coming forward from that. I mean, I think this bull run that we're in at the moment on cryptocurrency, whether you consider it that traditional or not, for me, as a chart trader, I think it's quite obvious that we're in bullish conditions for Bitcoin and for crypto assets, right? But I think it still has people a little bit kind of confused when you kind of overlay that against what's happening in the geopolitical scene, what's happening with the dollar. Yes, the dollar's starting to come back a bit now, but this thing has just been running off the scale, right? I mean, do you see it as that same thing, that we need to have that big kind of blow up, that meltdown, and then that regrowth? I'm not saying that that's going to happen this year or next year, but do you really see it that it's going to kind of consolidate from here? And then, like you say, the truth about adoption is, you can use it as the Hoover example, right? A Hoover isn't called a Hoover, it's a vacuum cleaner. It's just that Hoover was just the biggest thing in the space, so everybody knows it as a Hoover, right? Well, the same as, like you say, with your Apple Wallet. You're not turning up to a concert or a football match and you're not saying, here's my NFT in my digital wallet. You're saying, here's my ticket, scan it, let's go. So is the challenge that's kind of approaching the space now within adoption? Because for me, I think it is a user experience thing. I think I know people of my own age, right, in their 30s, that are really terrified of the idea of getting the digital wallet and a cold storage and the fact they've got to remember all these things that they don't really understand. And in their mind, they're just thinking there's this younger or current generation that are so much smarter and understand these things so much better that basically, they may as well tie their money up and throw it in a river. I think, how far away from that are we as someone that's in tune with the technology? How far away do you think we are from this stuff becoming mainstream in that respect?
So I don't think we are super far away. Why? Because people are used to digital things. And I will give you an example, not crypto, but digital. I'm not speaking about the wallet. My mother is buying the cinema tickets and she's buying this online and she's getting the cinema ticket in form of PDF on her email. So this is a digital file. Yeah. That is not a physical document. Usually she is printing this PDF, but this is not relevant. Yeah, of course. But at the end, she understands this digital, way of using that. And sometimes I showed her, of course, that she can get her email and, without printing, click on the file and show it in the cinema. And she's using it. So most of and she's around 60. So most of the people are used to the digital things right now. So moving from that, with ease of use, with the tools that I mentioned that are gonna be here very soon, in my opinion, to the way that they don't have to be everything don't have to be on your email in form of PDF file, but it's gonna be on your wallet, much easier. In my opinion, it's the matter of the next 5 years. Why? Because first, regulations are just around the corner. This and next year, the whole European Union is starting to be regulated for crypto. US will most probably somewhere soon as well introduce. A lot of Asian countries are introducing this as well. Singapore, which is a lighthouse for the whole Asia, already have some regulations and more are going to be implemented. UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they're a lighthouse for Middle East as well as the Africa. They are going to have those regulations as well. They already have some. So by having that, I believe much more capital will flow, as I said before, into space. This capital will gonna be divided between speculative capital that wants to speculate on the crypto assets and between the investment capital that want to be a part of the bigger picture. So they want to have a stake in the companies that will build this big economy that I was referring to during the dot-com bubble, but in here. And then they can have this new economy benefit in the longer run. So with those regulations floating in, I believe this is a matter of the next, let's say 35 years. because all those organizations want to onboard more people into the space. They are not investing billions of dollars or building whole regulations or switching up the business models into that direction because we have 400 million people. They are switching this because they are counting that remaining 8 billion will gonna be here as well. And very interesting idea and way how they can move on and do this is, for example, Telegram. I don't know if you are familiar, but in Telegram there is a wallet, crypto wallet built into the Telegram. And you can store your Bitcoin, you can use fiat currency, stable coins, this and that. And Telegram at the very beginning was just a communication application. And they onboarded 800 million people, which is like twice big as in the whole crypto worldwide. And then with one click, by introducing the wallet to the app that had 800 million people, they onboarded 800 million people to the crypto.
Just like that.
Easily. And what does it take to have a Telegram phone number?
No,
who don't have phone number those days, So everyone who was there can be onboarded easily. And I'm thinking about this kind of, onboarding and tools that might happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think the thing and it made me laugh when you're saying about your mum using the cinema. My mum does the same kind of thing, right? She'll kind of go through this process, and it's been a painful process to get her to adopt. But now she's kind of accepted it, and it's funny because she prints everything out as well. Like we go on holiday, or if we take her somewhere, she'll be like, "I've got it on my phone, but I've also got 5 different printed copies in case we lose one," or that kind of thing. But I think, like you said, I think something that can help the transition from now is if we look at their generation coming into the digital space. This is something nobody knew about. When I was growing up, I think really when we were growing up, and I'm probably a little bit older than you, but I mean, we didn't even have computers at school. I didn't have a mobile phone till I was in my teens, right? So the adoption for us was a little bit more of a stranger one. You either kind of jumped on board with this new magical world, or you had the naysayers. Again, like with cryptocurrency, people forget there were lots and lots of people that said the internet would never amount to anything. Right? People were dead against it because they were set in their ways. They had their paper files. This works. If it's not broken, I'm not going to try and fix it. But that's not progress, right? But now we're actually in a position where people are kind of digitally savvy, even the older generation of people, right? But then I think the kind of thing now is to make them feel safe, to make them feel secure and make them feel like it's easy. I remember the early days of PayPal. I knew a lot of people that wouldn't transact on PayPal because they thought that their money would just disappear. They had no clue about it. Where now, again, people don't even think about PayPal. The landscape that grew, the fact that digital transactions in money was huge. And really crypto is the next kind of level of that, right? So it's interesting to hear you say that because I really agree that we're dealing with kind of a user experience thing here. And I'm not as in tune with the markets in that respect as you are. But I really, really do kind of see that. I really do. So maybe we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. But I think for someone like yourself, you're so kind of forward looking. And I know that if you're thinking that this is going to happen in the next 5 years, then I know you're someone that's thinking 5 years beyond that already. Right. So, I mean, I suppose it's kind of looking at this idea of what the kind of future holds for people that want to get involved in the space as well, right? Because I know there'll be a load of people watching that will be massively inspired now. I remember the first time I met you, I came home and before I got on the plane, I'd ordered The Way of the Turtle and these other books you'd recommended me. And I thought, do you know what? The guys damn well convinced me actually that doing this manually isn't the way now. I need to make sure I'm not left behind as a manual trader, an intraday trader. I need to make sure that actually I'm ready for this transition, right, into the world forward. And we remember speaking with Pedro and Razor and all the team out there, and the conversation was amazing, but it was really eye-opening for me. So I suppose there's these kind of two questions really, but actually I want to focus on the first point, which is the people that are watching this that really want to kind of make that leap, that want to understand this better and want to kind of, look at ways that they can get involved in, be it code or kind of having a deeper understanding of this. What would you recommend if you were looking at Paweł 10 years ago, right? Longer, 15 years ago. What would your advice to Paweł be?
Don't change anything. You are good on your way.
Beautiful person, yeah, exactly.
I'm joking. What
would your advice to me be?
The first thing is it's going to be something that everyone is saying, but when you are on the place where I'm at or you are at, we are always saying very similar things, like education. Like this
It's
is
true,
very
man.
important. Why? Because and this is not because you need to understand how to use MetaMask. This is not about this. This is about understanding the root of what is happening in the space.
Yeah.
And I will give you an example why this education is important, because this can bring the way of thinking of yours in completely different direction, and you can have amazing ideas because you will understand the root problem or the root things that are behind the technology or something that you can use to start a business, to do trading, or to make some money, to do some bets in the crypto for future, etc., etc. Because a lot of people were become millionaires and billionaires because of the dot-com bubble. A lot were not, but a lot were because they understand the future of internet. Like a lot of people back then were saying that internet is not a thing that will gonna be used in the worldwide, and like the owner of Microsoft before were saying that we will never have a computer with more than 640 kilobytes of memory, etc., etc. Those things were happening because they were not they were short seeing, they were not looking forward. So, and the example is the transaction systems worldwide. So let's say stocks or futures or forwards or something. So 20 years ago, and it was just 20 years ago, everyone was buying stocks by shouting, on the desk in the exchange,
bullpen. Yeah,
with papers in the hand. Like we've seen those movies, like everyone's seen. Then with development of the internet, the speed of the internet from very slow cables through fiber optics, the satellites right now, this and that, we were moving with speed and accessibility. So that become and started the era of the electronic transaction making systems, which created a whole quant solutions, automating strategies, this and that. But still, all of that was silos. Those were in silos. So you can make transactions, but in that bank. You can make transactions, but within that broker. You can buy US stocks, but only through the brokers or companies that are allowing to do US stocks. The Polish one or bank or some kind of broker don't have US stocks. They have usually ADRs, which are like some sort of derivatives, the local derivatives for US stocks. Those are not real stocks. So you have a lot of different instruments that pretend to be that one, or CFDs or this and that. And right now we see another shift by moving all those into the blockchain. We have one universal digital assets exchange layer to exchange any kind of digital assets. And the importance of that is because imagine we have this electronic system to make transactions on US stocks. Would Chinese use that for their stocks? Most probably not, because they do not trust the US company. Or the Chinese company that is created their own, or Russian that is creating their own technology to make transactions. Would US use that? Not, most probably not, because it's theirs, because someone have a hand on top of that. But all of those countries are using blockchain to exchange value. Why? Because this is not owned by anyone. So we are moving up with this solution. So that means that in the future, we can exchange, for example, my plane ticket for 3 stocks of Tesla. And this is going to be possible on the DEX because I can have a liquidity pool of that. Or I can just make transaction on the OTC. You are sending me 3 shares of Tesla. I'm sending you like business class ticket to New York. And we can do a deal like that. Right now, it's super hard. You can do so. So this is opening a completely new ways to make business, completely new business model that were not possible before, because you have to integrate everyone with everyone, which was really not possible. So this is my my answer. Why this is important? Education, but not the education like everyone thinks. Like I will watch a course on Coursera,
coding or Python,
do transaction using MetaMask. This is to understand the root of the problem, the root of what blockchain is, to understand how I can use it, how I can leverage a different industry. For example, I'm the hotel industry or someone else in the other industry. So how can I today leverage or solve the pain points of my industry by using those tools that blockchain is bringing to us, this technology or something, or maybe from the different angle, not to do a business, but maybe to do some transaction, tradability, etc., etc. So this is my answer Yeah.
I think it's a great answer. So I think the real takeaway from that is, like with anything, right, is understanding the root cause. Because I think what people try to do is they try to kind of impose themselves on something they don't generally understand, right? So, people will say to you, well, I want to be involved in Bitcoin, I want to be involved in the blockchain, right? But until you understand the real core of it, and by understanding the core, it opens a lot of opportunity, because then you can truly understand where it can affect things that you're passionate about, right? So for people, like you say, people might want to build a business about it. People might want to use it to, facilitate things in their own business better, right? But when you have that application, you have that core kind of level of understanding.
Yes.
It makes it so much easier for you to relate to what you're doing, right? And I think there's no doubt that if you can pique people's interest, right, and people can feel a relationship with that they'll feel a lot more comfortable developing within the space. Now, something else you said, which I completely agree with. You look at the blockchain and you look at this kind of neutral ground that every company, every country, right, that can operate within there. Yeah. Like you said, you haven't got a system built by China that the US won't use. You haven't got a system built by the US that China or Russia won't use, right? You've basically got what we would call a level playing field for all of the operators to operate in. Do you think that the challenge for these people is working out how they can do that? Because they're giving up, ultimately, I suppose, their control over their own individual markets, right? Or their understanding of their own demographics. It's a very different world, right? Having everybody kind of communicate and buy and sell and have this kind of open realm that everybody operates in, because I suppose people are always thinking about edge. Countries are no different, right? So I suppose to kind of frame that in a question, do you think this is something that especially countries, governments are trying to work out how they kind of fit into this world and not relinquish control to other people?
That's an amazing question. And I have a theory that I called decentralization bubbling in the crypto. And I want to create some kind of work or a set of articles about that. So like in early days of the crypto blockchain, like before 2017, there was decentralization of the retail on the human level. So you had a node, I had a node, a couple of other guys worldwide had the nodes, and that was the whole node army worldwide. This was the only moment in the crypto history when we have this true like retail decentralization. Because more or less like everyone was equal in that puzzle. And then 2017 brought bigger capital, bigger liquidity to the crypto. Stablecoins started to appear on the market, which right now is like most probably 30% of the capitalization of the overall crypto, etc., because everything is denominated to the stablecoins right now. So, and this decentralization went up, and decentralization went up with amount of capital that is being managed. So before retail, and then we are on the corporate level. So right now, corporations, big miners, groups, etc., they fight for having a control. The Chinese, Russian, US, Iran, European, this and that. And they have like 2% of the mining, 3%. So decentralization moved up together with the capital and the money. And in the future, I believe, like because bubbles in the oil are going up. So in the future, I think this bubbling will go up further onto the governmental level. Because as we will introduce CBDCs, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Again, we can have opinion. It's better or good, but it's going to happen. So we can do a thing with that. So they will introduce CBDCs. They will introduce treasuries. They will introduce RWAs, regulated financial products. Bank will start jumping into the crypto. The SWIFT going to be on chain. Then the decentralization will move up onto the governmental level. So you will have like big bodies of government that will have their own mining power, and they will most probably gonna be equal between different major players like China, Russia, US. They can do this through those corporates that are underneath, but it's gonna be regulated somehow. So still, there is one system that no one have control of, and this decentralization is bubbling because everyone is speaking right now that decentralization is dead or it's alive. Like it's a very hard answer, to provide, because like what does it mean decentralization? You need to ask this, and most of the people think like because we have a lot of computers. No, because how many retail customers you need to own 1 billion worth ASICs or graphic cards? Like a lot. How many funds you need? Like BlackRock is $9 trillion fund, so 1 billion for them is like fraction. It's a statistical error. $1 billion of statistical error. That's a number. So so that means that they can afford a lot and put a lot of money, which will cover all these retail customers' pile of cash like within a second. But when it's going up, the governmental level will fill it up. So that's why we have this my theory of decentralization bubbling, because it's the only system worldwide that is being used by completely opposite parties that sometimes are in a war to each other, but they are still using that and they're still contributing to that system, because this simplifies so much exchange of goods, of digital assets, simplifies the value chains, the value movement worldwide, and is removing all the legacy systems and solutions that have been developed during the last 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to our point earlier about transitions, when you're transitioning out of this traditional finance realm, these big inefficient systems, right, but that are rolled out literally on levels that is very hard to comprehend how big that infrastructure is and what a big change it is to come in. But what I found really interesting about what you just said, actually, when you're looking about stepping this up onto a governmental level, is that maybe the kind of element of control comes in with the corporations then, right? Because the corporations that are getting built into it now, that are getting, that are adopting this, there's an element of the government are going to take them in, right? So like we were almost talking about in terms of how HSBC would buy a Silicon Valley bank for what they've got. Maybe there's not so much the purchasing of them, but there's still a big power play there, isn't there, between the governments and how they can position the corporates that are underneath them.
Yeah, definitely. So, but what was the question?
No, it was more of a statement, I think, actually.
Because that was the comment. Yeah.
It was kind of making me think about it out loud, really. The idea that it's kind of, the whatever realm you step into, and I love the blockchain. The entities operating within the blockchain will still have an element of power and control about them that can be leveraged by governments, right? So I think that's also necessary to get that level of adoption in there, because any major controlling factor are never going to want to give up the control that they have on anything, right? Yeah. They're going to want to still be able to hold something. So maybe there's an appreciation now that it's inevitable that it's moving that way. So governments now will be working incredibly hard, I suppose, to position themselves in the way that they can make it as advantageous for themselves as they can, but also on the flip side that they're not getting left behind. There's going to be a lot of scared, overly bloated, very heavy, very big countries out there that are looking at your El Salvadors, that are looking at what Africa are doing, looking at what Asia are doing, right, and thinking, at the moment, these guys are a bit of a threat to us, and we either need to find a way to leapfrog them, because the smear campaigns against crypto haven't worked, right? So you can't control this now. It's out of the bag, and it's going to get to where it's going to go. The timeline is one factor, but I agree with you. I don't think there's any doubt anymore now that massive corporations are thinking about this. But the next step up from that is government, when governments really start. So when people say that we're early in this space, I think people forget about those elements. I think people think that 60K is big for Bitcoin when it came from a few cents, but I don't think they're realizing that dwindling world supply of that fixed world supply, when it's got two huge layers of mass adoption to go through yet, that thing can, and other elements to it as well, can explode.
The fun fact that I would like to add is that early days of crypto was it's an alternative currency. We're gonna blow up the whole financial markets, but at the end we made a full circle, and once again, bigger capital drives this business at the end. So we were the initial idea that every Degen was speaking all about was to get away of big money to control such a solution. And at the end, we ended with big money controlling such a solution. So that's it was because at the end, if the power of such a technology like a blockchain in that particular case is the mining power, and mining power is equipment that you can buy, and if you can buy this for money, which means bigger capital always win, and retail doesn't have such money as the funds are and big capital. So it's, again, we are in the same place, but with the new technology that is much more efficient, I would say.
It is. I suppose it's the same journey dressed up a little bit differently, right?
Definitely.
Like we go back to saying about the Wild West. Fine, people loved the freedom. What people didn't like was the lack of progress, the fact that the healthcare, all the other issues that you face. for the progress of the species, it was very important to move away from that realm into a new one that people fought for a long time. But ultimately, whatever your view is of it, the progress of the species would have been massively stunted if they hadn't have made that move. And I think we're in that kind of similar situation here when we're talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So I think that's an absolute gem to end on. In fact, I'm not even going to ask you to leave on a gem because it was such a good one. But I would just like to say thank you very much for coming on today. We're literally bang on to the minute, 1600. So we're going to not rob too much time off of our dear friend Adrian and his upcoming webinar. But just a big thank you, Paweł, for coming on, for all the alpha you shared. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people watching this back. And for anybody out there, make sure that you're giving Paweł a follow. You can see the name on there at Paweł Synapse as well. And make sure to check out Nomad Fulcrum. We'll be putting out information. There'll be information in the description. There'll be everything being shared on the Discord again and on Twitter too. So make sure that you give these guys a follow. And in truth as well, we've had a lot of people messaging him while we're on the show saying, already followed, love this guy. And you know, I can't blame him. I can't blame him. I felt exactly the same the first time I met him, and I still learn something new from him every time as well. So without holding you up any further, my friend, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for being a great guest.
Thank you for inviting me in. See you soon, man.
Take care, brother.